Everyday people working 9 to 5, saving up that money, trying to survive, investing in the future, trying to be wise, through loving money heroes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nick Johnson, host of Everyday Money Heroes, and I've reached early retirement. I'm here to provide information on how to obtain financial independence and inspire you through sharing stories of everyday people who are turning knowledge into freedom.
That hustle, always reaching for the sky. We wanna be money heroes, never gonna shy.
Hello and welcome to Everyday Money Heroes. We provide information and inspiration to people of all ages to take control of their financial journey. I'm your host, Nick Johnson, and today we are joined by Doug Cunnington, a true everyday money hero who turned a layoff into an opportunity to build his own path to financial independence. Before we get into our conversation with Doug, some quick housekeeping. Going to ask if you are watching us here on YouTube that you would subscribe and also share. And if you're listening to us on your podcast platform of choice, that you would follow us there as well. And so now to Doug. Doug is an expert in internet and affiliate marketing, a business he successfully launched after being laid off from his corporate job in 2015. After relocating to Longmont, he discovered and quickly immersed himself in the f.i.r.e community. You might already recognize him as he's been featured on major outlets like CNBC, Yahoo Finance, and NASDAQ.com, and on personal finance podcasts, including Stacking Benjamins and Choose FI. Doug is also the host of the popular Mile High Fi show, where he dives into topics like life after corporate work, fire lifestyle, side hustles, health, and everything else on his mind. His show is known for being raw, candid, and feeling just like you're sitting on a private conversation with friends interested in the FI journey. So get ready to hear Doug's story and his unique take on achieving a financially independent lifestyle. All right, that is Doug, and welcome, sir.
It's awesome to be here, Nick. I'm pumped, and it's been like cool getting to know you a little bit more over the last couple of years. We bumped into each other at in-person events, which is
Mhm.
like the best way to just get to know someone. So pumped to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
True. Thank you. I was a lurker for a long time, Doug. So, first time, I can say that I saw you was at FinCon. I want to say Orlando. What's Orlando? It might have been Orlando before. I know for a fact, I want to say it was New Orleans. Because
Okay.
I believe you were there and you all are really good at, they have booths where you can do video recording. And I remember seeing you at the table one of those times. And I saw you all, and I think like kind of brief, kind of like how you doing kind of situation. And I was in the midst of like trying to figure out my voice and kind of the space because I did a whole lot of rebrands before Everyday Money Heroes. So before Everyday Money Heroes, I was the path less traveled. And then also I was chasing cheese, which I actually did really like chasing cheese, but it just
Alliteration is always good, and I love
yes,
cheese, so
yeah, yeah, it is pretty awesome. And so then at that particular point, as I kind of started to try to feel like I got my voice. I kind of settled on Everyday Money Heroes, but along that way, I remember I want to say when I was chasing cheese that I came up to you, and I believe Carl was there with you that time, and I kind of spoke to you, say hello, I appreciate everything. But then it's kind of over time, since I'm by default an introvert, it kind of helps me to like kind of see somebody and be able to connect with them and be like, hey, it's good to see you again, and just kind of build on that. So I think in up to last time I actually saw you in Portland, we had actually did a lot more talking in Atlanta. That's what it was. So we
yeah.
did a lot of talking in Atlanta, and then when I saw you in Portland, we actually the great thing about in-person meetups, like you said, is that you have this ability to have these kind of six degrees of separation with people. And it just so happened that like I started to like meet people who knew you more and then was like kind of able to talk and like, it was just really great. So
Yeah.
it's definitely great to get from behind the computer and actually out in person. So with that being said, Doug, you are let's kind of talk about your origin story because as we talk about every hero has an origin story, and so most of us, or some of us, I won't say most of us, some of us have been like kind of money nerds from birth. And I tell people all the time, I was charging my siblings interest on loans when I was like 8, 9 years old. that was just me. I was like, hey, I was like, a loan's a loan, and I'm not doing interest free here. So what would you say as far as how was young Doug around money, things of life, kind of career paths and things like that?
I'll give you a couple highlights, and I
Okay.
think it's easy to look back and see the thread and connect the dots.
Mm,
But, back then, I didn't really think about it too much. So, one key time, I think it was 12 years old, and I wanted to get a CD player. And my dad was like, maybe you can get one, but how will you buy the CDs?
mm,
And he said, put together a plan. And I sat down with my little notebook and wrote down that I was going to cut grass. And then, like, the next day, I started pushing the mower around the yard or the neighborhood
mm,
and asking people, like, hey, do you want me to cut your grass? And I was like I said, 12 years old. So
mm.
people are like, all right, I'll let you cut my grass. I went to people that had like tall grass that needed
Okay.
to be cut. So they obviously had an issue that they didn't want to cut.
Mm,
So anyway, that was one key thing. And again, I eventually leaned into the entrepreneurship area, but I did take a detour for a little while. I have a computer engineering degree and
mhm,
ended up professionally doing management consulting. I didn't actually do any computer engineering, but
mm,
more project management and software implementation kind of stuff, real boring things, project
mm,
management, that sort of stuff. So there were a couple of pieces that, laid the foundation, but overall, not a huge money nerd. And I was going to say for those years when I was cutting grass through 12 to maybe, I don't know, 18 when I went to college after that, I saved a lot of money. So I never had, the bagger job at the grocery store, didn't work at McDonald's, but I was making like pretty good money for what I was doing. No overhead, right? So there's no middle managers in the way if I'm
mm,
cutting grass and I'm getting paid cash and
mm,
that sort of thing. So that was a time where I saved a lot of money, but by the time I spent a lot of that money going to college and,
mm.
I took like one loan and then didn't accumulate debt, which was great. And
Oh, wow.
overall, that supported me. And as I got my job after college, I did run up some debt, but I wasn't thinking, hey, I'm going to retire early. It wasn't really on my radar. I was like, hey, I'll climb the
Mm,
corporate ladder. So those are a
mhm,
couple like touch points where I you know, was able to earn some money on my own and see what it was like to work for myself, which was
mhm.
good. And then I kind of forgot about that and then got into the corporate lifestyle, which over time I realized, I don't think this is really working for me.
Hmm. So, thanks for sharing that, Doug. It seems like you already kind of had that muscle of living below your means because you were able to save so much money, and to literally be able to go to college and almost exit with like no debt is a huge leg up. Because I tell people quite often that I was fortunate in that when I went to college, I had been in the military. So it covered my college expenses. So when I got out, I didn't have that burden on me. But I know a lot of people who, several years removed from college. When I say several, I mean like 10, 15, 20 years, they're still paying off student loans. And that is quite the challenge. So that just really shows that discipline kind of going in that you're able to do that. So that's great.
Yeah, and then, I went to Georgia Tech and they have a
Mm,
co-op program and it's
mm,
kind of like an internship, but basically you go to school for one term and then you work for one term. So you
mm.
alternate and
Oh,
it
okay.
takes longer, but essentially you could earn enough money to put yourself through school, which is what I did. So I did that and it
Mm,
took, 6.5 years to get through school. So it
hmm.
takes longer,
Yeah.
but no debt. So, and I
Yeah.
got work experience. So it's great.
You don't have that anchor there. So you kind of shared that you got into corporate life, and it really seems like you weren't a fan of being reminded about the TPS reports.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like that the amount of flair that you hit on all the good stuff. So I know part of your story is that you kind of got into the corporate America. Also, you didn't feel like it was a good fit, but then also there was a layoff that occurred. So were you at like several jobs and then you were laid off? Or was it that, okay, this first job, like, hey, this ain't working and you were laid off? How exactly did that work out?
It took me a little while to figure it all out,
Mm,
and I got that first corporate job, good company, one of the big consulting firms, and it's project based for people that don't know. So you may be on a project for, a couple months or, a year, couple years, sometimes they're longer, but a lot of times they're shorter engagements. So I was thinking if I switch projects and that sort of thing, maybe it'll work out. Turns out it doesn't. And it's just the way the corporate world works. It didn't work well for me and my personality. But I try to suffer through it because you're like around everyone else who's doing that, and you're like, well, they seem like they have like a good plan. Like, let's just keep trying to do this. So I left that company after a couple years, which actually is a great, it's not a secret, but if you want to get a good raise, like keep moving companies
Keep moving.
every couple years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the companies don't want to tell you that because they don't want to have to deal with that. But in hindsight, I should have switched more. So I did switch after a couple years, worked at another company. Then I stayed there for about 9 years. And eventually, after some time, I did realize by asking some actually friends that were a few years older than me, like, how do you get promoted? Like, I'm really struggling with this. Like, I'm doing what they say. And eventually I got promoted, and it was not about doing a good job on the work and executing well. It was about marketing yourself to get promoted and doing all these things to get promoted, not doing a good job on the project, which is it's counterintuitive. And you get out of school and you're thinking, oh, it's more merit based, but it's really merit based only if as the politics, the corporate politics go. So I did figure that out, and I'll pause there. So I did get promoted, had a team, and it was going a little rough. And then I have a good sort of finish for the layoff portion of it, but I'll pause here and let you ask any follow-ups
Okay.
if you have some.
Yeah, no, I do. One of the things that you share, and unfortunately, I learned this way too late in the game, is that loyalty is good when it comes to relationships, but not when it comes to your occupation. As far as you really need to move every, few years and honestly, it's best to move externally and not necessarily internally within the company, because a lot of times if you stay there and even if you're a high performer, you might get, okay, well, a 30% increase for a year. Well, when inflation is 3% or more, you're really not getting an increase. And so sometimes within certain companies, you can move to a new role and it might, exceed, that kind of minimum increase. But honestly, you don't get it until like you go to another company. You can catch up with the cost of living until you actually really start to stack those incremental increases with your salary. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Oh, also, something else I wanted to make mention to you is that kind of marketing situation that you made reference to, as far as like, okay, it's not about merit, it's about, being able to, really um, show yourself as being a likable, almost kind of fun person sometimes. It's not really about, how great a job that you can do, especially when you're talking about leadership and not necessarily being in the technical world. So that is a good point as well. Um,
Yeah.
One of the things you kind of said that, okay, you kind of told us this portion here as far as understanding kind of like your journey there, but there's a portion where, something unexpected happened, I'm assuming, and that was around the layoff, right?
Yeah. In hindsight, again, maybe not so unexpected.
Okay.
Around 2013, so a couple years before I got laid off, I found a podcast called Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn,
Pat Flynn. Okay.
and I I wasn't interested in that sort of area of like side hustles and entrepreneurship and working online and making money online. But I found it and I was like, this seems like a total scam. But as I learned more about it, I was like, oh, it seems legit. So I started some websites and the affiliate marketing stuff and dabbling in SEO starting in 2013 and had some, I mean, it was a roller coaster ride, but I had some great months where I made like thousands of dollars, like replacement income. So not, I was thinking, hey, if I make like $300, that's great. But I was making like six or eight or $10,000 like here and
Wow.
there.
Okay.
And it would, I mean, again, roller coaster. So it would like drop off. But I had the sort of, I had the taste, right? I knew I could do it. I knew I could, again, make money and not have the overhead of like the corporate structure and that sort of thing. Because, in consulting, they're charging hundreds of dollars per hour and I'm only seeing like a small portion of it. Again, I'm getting these tiny little raises, not getting promoted. and I started dabbling. So I did have a team, and I'll give you a little piece here. So I had a team of either, 6 to 15 people over the last couple of years that I was working before getting laid off, and I started delegating everything. So you're a military guy,
Uh-huh.
right? Most of
Hmm.
my friends were in the military at that, or had a history in were working corporate gigs, but they were in the military for a few years. So I was just like, yeah, I'm delegating everything except for the things that I have to do, which was just
Hmm.
a few meetings a week. But
Okay.
then your team operates really well when I get
High
out of the way,
performers. High
right? Yeah,
performers.
they can get the job done.
Mhm.
And in many companies and organizations, they can't get promoted unless they perform at the next level and have
Mhm.
like like documented times where they performed at the next level. So I was actually helping my team, helping them get promoted. Many of them did get promoted, but I delegated everything. So it was great to go on vacation because I'm like, everything's handled. You take my
Mhm.
meetings, you do other stuff, but it also makes it really easy to lay you off, especially
Mhm.
when my managers were like, "Yeah, you've delegated like why is this person doing this meeting?" I'm like, "Well, I wanted them to step up and blah blah blah."
Growth opportunity. There
Yeah. So
you go.
that was one aspect. The other is by then I was working remotely, like
Mhm.
I think 100% of the time. So it was gradual over years, but I don't know, starting in like 2012, I was like pretty much remote 100% of the time. And I decided to move. So we were in Atlanta, and my wife and I were both remote, and we were traveling around a little bit. And basically, I called my manager and I was like, we moved to Montana. We moved to Bozeman, Montana,
Mhm.
and I hope we could work it out. And
Mhm.
I didn't realize it, but it was a pure sort of like FU money situation where I'm like, I did this stuff. We value this. We moved. I hope we could work it out. And they said, we maybe we can, but I think I made it another couple weeks, and they were like, all right, we got to let you go.
Oh
So,
wow. Okay.
so yeah, I mean, it worked out great. So it wasn't
Mhm.
again, in hindsight, it wasn't a huge surprise,
Mhm.
but basically, I like sh delegated everything. I moved away, and I,
Mhm.
kind of made a point about everything, and it turned out great. Like I
Mhm.
was so happy to be laid off, actually.
Okay. And that's a fear that many people have, Doug, because first of all, most individuals, we know that research shows that most people live check to check. And so just kind of when you exercise that saving muscle, it does somewhat free you from at least some of that fear from saying, hey, you know what happens if I get laid off? Because I remember the first time I went from the military to corporate America, and I heard them talking about RIFs. And I had never heard of a RIF before. I was like, what's a RIF? And that was just a fancy word of saying a layoff because that's a reduction in force. And I remember the first time that happened, I was like, man, I was like, I got a wife, I got, some kids, I got a mortgage. What am I going to do? And I was a very frugal person back then, but I did not have enough to live off of. So when that happened, it really made me change my mindset of okay, what am I going to do? So when the next time they decide to do this, I'll be in a better situation. And literally, as the years went by, they would make those announcements about reductions in force until I got to the point where I was like, hey, I was like, I'm raising my hand. Will you please lay me off? Because I know it's a severance. I was like, pick me, pick me. But I had to do it. So I was like, okay, what can I do? So I got, into real estate, and I started investing more in the stock market and stuff like that. Just really, I'm equipping myself. So when that did happen, I technically had that FU money that you were talking about, where you can kind of, not have to live in that fear of being concerned that, okay, is my number going to be called? So when you moved to Montana, so at some point you make it to Longmont. And so curious, how does that happen? And part of the reason why I want to share this is because we're definitely going to dive into community. And I am in Jacksonville, Florida. I know we have an awesome community here, but I know there's an awesome community in Longmont as well. So how'd you end up in Longmont from Montana?
My wife got a job down in Boulder,
Hmm.
and we were familiar with the area. Actually, we thought we were going to move to this area, but when we got to Montana, we really fell in love with it there. So Longmont is a little bit cheaper than Boulder.
Hmm.
And we knew there's a lot of cool stuff around here. The Rocky Mountain National Park is close by, and it's a nice area. So we ended up here, and I was like lightly aware of the fact that Pete Mr. Money Mustache
Mhm.
lived in the area, but wasn't really on my radar so much. So I didn't put it together. I didn't think about it until many months later.
Okay. So how exactly did you become so engaged in the community now?
They have a co-working space. So
Hmm.
my former podcast co-host Carl Jensen and Mindy Jensen, as well as Pete Aidney, they have this co-working space. And I was working in our apartment at the time, and home office, it was fine, but I was like, it'll be good to like get out. And I looked up the different co-working spaces, and I then remembered I was like, oh yeah, Mr. Money Mustache is in this area. I'll go check it out. It's like pretty close by, and it's one of the cheaper options for a co-working space, which most people don't use it as a co-working space. There's only a couple few people each
Hmm.
day, and essentially I think I just emailed him. I was like, hey, can I get a tour? Got a tour, and I joined in, I think, like the summer of 2019,
Oh
something
wow.
like
Okay.
that. So I was going to a couple of the events. There weren't too many around that time frame, but I met Carl at one
Hmm.
of those, and I got to know some of the folks in the community, which was much smaller at the time.
Hmm.
And I invited Carl to be on my podcast. So I have another show called The Doug Show, very
Okay.
modestly named The Doug Show. And I mostly talked about marketing and other stuff, but I called it The Doug Show so I could put whatever I want on there,
Okay.
including, chatting with a blogger like Carl. So I brought him on, and we recorded a couple times. And the second time, this was over the course of several months, but at the second time, I had a blast. It was really fun. I think Carl did too. And I was like, hey, do you want to do a podcast together? Like, I don't know any details or what, but if you're
Hmm.
interested, like, we could figure it out. So that's how we started Mile High Fi. And that was like I think early 2021, something like that.
Okay. All right. That's cool. And that co-working space that you make reference to is now Philandia, right?
Yeah,
I
pretty
know he'll
much.
be. I
Yeah.
know he'll be happy to hear that. I think I heard a recent episode where it was a kind of a rebrand on that, and I think he was voting for Philandia, but I don't think it made it right.
That's correct. Yeah. So, and we can, reference the episode. So I had
Hmm.
Pete, he lives a couple miles away. So he literally bikes over here. So it's not a myth. He actually bikes over here. And then we recorded an episode. So for the people that don't know, they, it was a co-working space, but very few people work there. It was more of a social club. So now there's like a formal rebrand, and it's called the Phi Collective. There's information on mrmoneymustache.com/HQ, so you can get the info there. And now they're actually opening it up for like virtual members, and I think they're planning
Oh,
on doing
nice.
like live streams and other virtual events, because the other thing is like people pass through town all the time. Actually, I get a bunch of messages myself
Hmm.
where people are like, "Hey, we're coming through town. Is there a chance we can get into the co-working space?" But it's like a members only thing. A lot of times there's not folks in there unless there's an event. But if you're actually like a member of a remote member,
Hmm.
then you have some way to get in touch with people and maybe like show up for a potluck, or maybe there's an
Oh,
event
cool.
going on, or there's a coffee and community chat happening and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So, you know, then you're not a random person traveling through town trying to email me. And I'm like, I'm not hosting, like, I don't do that stuff.
Hmm.
So I push them towards Carl. Carl's, they have a facility,
Hmm.
talk to Carl. He loves that stuff. But yeah, I'm just like, I can't have it. So
Yeah, no, I think that's great that there is a spot where people can come together and just once again have that sense of community that is so important. So you get there, you learn about what was then the co-working space, and you kind of start to connect with these people. It's let's kind of I want to also just kind of level set. Would you consider yourself, because there's all type of retirement pleas, right? Like, hey, when you say that you're retired, you can't make another dollar in your life. And some people are like, hey, I'm just choosing to do what I enjoy. So, when it comes to your journey, would you say that, as far as have you reached financial independence? Are you still kind of like doing more of a, I don't have to no longer exchange my time for money, so I'm just kind of doing what I enjoy right now. Or what would you kind of how would you define your space right now?
I would say I'm retired now. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think, a couple years ago I would have said like semi-retired.
Hmm.
Right now, and I'll define this, and I don't really care about the retirement police. Like when,
Hmm.
my other podcast was in a much more it was a different industry. People weren't as it's not that they were mean, but like, make money online. It's a sketchy area, and that's essentially what I was doing. But a couple data points. So one, my wife retired about a year and a half ago, and
Hmm.
she's super financially conservative. She doesn't have the entrepreneurship spirit, and when you figure out that you could earn money on your own, you feel like it's a superpower. You're much more confident. You know that you could figure out how to like provide value and have people
Hmm.
pay you for it. So she doesn't have that sort of in her ethos, and she's way more conservative, but she was confident enough to retire. The
Hmm.
other data point is, I started working for myself in 2015, and it was a slow start for a few months, but eventually I did really well with my websites. I created online courses and earned, about twice as much and a little bit more per year than I would have at a normal, good high paying corporate job.
Hmm.
So over those years, we were saving. We basically like stayed at a very, kind of a frugal
Hmm.
level, and were able to save. And then starting in about 2020, I started doing less work, about
Okay.
20% less work each year. Not strictly, but I was just like, I don't like doing that activity. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Hmm.
So at this point, and why I could feel confident saying, "Hey, I'm pretty much retired. I do the podcast and I got some other stuff." In the last couple of years, I shut down all my courses. I don't have any websites.
Hmm.
I'm basically barely breaking even. I'm earning just a little bit of money. As you
Hmm.
know, running a podcast, you have to
Right.
pay for hosting. People don't realize that there's hosting, there's other software, and there's other things that creep up. You have to file taxes too. So there's a handful of admin things that people don't think about,
Hmm.
and it costs a couple few $1,000s a year
Hmm.
in that stuff. Now, you could do it on the cheap, but anyway, the point is I am still doing some creative activities, which these turn out to be conversations with friends like you, Nick.
Hmm.
Most of the time I'm chatting with people that I want to chat with,
Hmm.
and but I'm not earning any money,
Hmm.
essentially.
Yeah. It's a great point that you make, Doug, is that you get to the point where you don't have to do it. It doesn't mean that you won't do it. You just don't have to do it. And it's great where you can identify what you like to do with your time. And because we only get so much of it. And so once we have that ability to be able to say, okay, how I want to spend my time and actually do those things that fulfill you, it's great. So I commend you for saying, hey, you know what, even though I have the ability to make money, doesn't mean that I have to. And I think a lot of times people continue to chase after certain things. I know for myself, you mentioned that, you live pretty modestly. I do too. And so really, even right now, if I open up my 401k and I saw that what I had there was doubled, I'd be happy, but it's not gonna really change the way I live that much. So additional money really won't do it. And so it's really challenging when I see individuals constantly running behind. I was like, well, at the end of the day, it really shouldn't change your life much. And also when I see individuals in corporate America, and you realize that didn't work for you. And I see people who constantly, I did good. I was a high performer. Most of the time, I was an individual contributor. I had some roles where I was a people leader. I did really great. And I think probably where I was fortunate that is that I felt like I kept hitting my head on a glass ceiling. But at the same time, I feel like if I kept progressing, that maybe I would have like felt like I was just like trapped to like stay there, like, oh, I'm doing so good. I did all right. And that's why some people, they just really always feel like they have to stay there because they're constantly, that's how they get their validation. I don't get my validation out of that. And I think it's a tragedy when some people do.
That's a key thing. And I talk to so many folks where their identity is tied up with their profession,
Hmm.
and it could be good at times, but like when you're ready to move on, it could be really difficult. And then you're just, you know, regular old Nick, you're
Yeah.
not you're not the high performer.
Yeah.
And and I have been able to gradually get rid of those identities. So by the time I got laid off, I was like, I don't really care that I did consulting or project management or whatever. And
Mhm.
then I stepped away from the SEO and marketing. Like you didn't even know that I had this other like not an
I didn't
alter
know
ego,
you.
but like, yeah, there's a whole other thing, right? That it's
Yeah.
like it's way bigger than what I
Hmm.
was doing with my or what I am doing with Mile High Fi.
Hmm.
And the, more recently, this has been a couple, maybe it doesn't matter how long ago it was, but my wife was like, "Yeah, you are maybe like really identifying with like podcasting and stuff like that." And I was like, "Oh, I need to watch out. I need to make sure
Hmm.
that you know, if I stop podcasting or like people stop listening or whatever, that I'm not invested in it so much that it like really depresses me. And the way I enjoy it. I would do it anyway. It gives us an excuse to chat and get to know
Hmm.
each other better. But one thing I did is like I disconnected from the analytics because
Hmm.
especially on
Hmm.
YouTube, I mean, you
Oh
can
yeah.
get so granular on the data and it's cool. It's interesting. But if you follow the data too much, you could be making videos that you don't want to make because they performed really well.
Right.
And it's one of those areas where I'm like, you know what? If things are really good, I'll be happy about it. But I got to be cautious because if they could drop off and I don't want to, get depressed
Hmm.
about that sort of thing. So I'm self-aware and I'm like, okay, keep your identity and ego in check, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And so you say over like the last 5 years, you really consider yourself to be, for the most part, retired. Um, so I guess we all kind of have this definition to me of happiness, as far as like, sometimes it changes over time. So as far as you, Doug, how right now, what do you find fulfilling? I know right now, apparently, I know I see the guitars in the back, so I'm assuming that you rock out. But what else kind of makes you happy there, Doug?
Yeah, it's a moving target, and I think, for everyone, it probably should be.
Mm-hmm.
And, happiness, and I'll maybe put in like contentment because like it's a little bit different, but there's a little nuance. And I hope you don't ask me how to define either one, but there's a little bit of a difference. But
No.
what I like, couple huge things where you could plot me down in like different areas, different places, and like it doesn't matter too much. It's like having autonomy over my time
Mm-hmm.
and who I spend time with and like what I'm doing.
Okay.
So I like a variety of stuff, like you're pointing out some of the guitars. That's one of my financial vices currently.
Mm-hmm.
Love the guitars and gear and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But doing something active like that is a big deal to me, and being active and fit and feeling good and being able to hit the gym or go walk outside, that sort of thing, go for a long hike,
Mm-hmm.
and having the community aspect that you mentioned. I'm also a big food person. I like to cook a lot. I'm not necessarily like a foodie where I go out and eat, but I like to cook, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
big part of, I mean, it takes up most of my brain space. Like I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat next, what I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to cook, going to the grocery store. So I love that portion of it. But overall, in summary, like the happiness portion for me, like I've definitely identified the autonomy, and it's why the corporate job didn't make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone asks like, "Oh, could you go back to a job?" Probably not. Probably not because the autonomy is lost, and I really apparently don't like it when people tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, autonomy, freedom with time,
Mhm.
freedom with who I want to spend time with.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about those things, Doug, is that it doesn't necessarily cost money to do those things, but it requires money to do those things, if it makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you've set up yourself in a situation, others that are in the community have decided to say, you know what, I know it's a necessity for me to be able to have, a nest egg, to be able to have my ownership of time and enjoy what I'm doing. And my wife and I, we do a lot of volunteering. And we were talking about what we're going to do and things like that. And we were at one of the schools, and actually someone asked my wife, said, "Hey, you know what? You're always here. Why don't you just take a job, so you can get paid?" And she said, "No." She was like, "Cause then I won't enjoy it."
Yeah.
She she was like, "I won't enjoy it because the dynamic changes there for many reasons. It goes from being something that you're passionate about to when you start taking money for that stuff, it's completely different." And so we have it set up where we no longer have to pursue those opportunities to get money, and we're just able to do stuff though. That is great. So I definitely understand you on that one, Doug. Um,
How
Go
do you
ahead.
define happiness?
Man, how do I decide? Honestly, it's probably pretty close to what you said, Doug. I, as an individual, I'm a very modest person. I don't do a whole lot of stuff. To me, my biggest joy is going to a Taco Tuesday or going to happy hour and getting some discounted apps. Just kind of my thing. So I'm a simple guy, and I will have to say, how do I define happiness? It does come with that kind of autonomy of time, but I really enjoy serving others. I really do that, and I love serving others in the community where I have no ulterior motive for it. And so, literally, right now, I am working with a an area about a dementia study, and it's through Mayo Clinic, and they're trying to create these dementia-friendly communities, and everyone there, I think they probably all got me by at least 15 to 20 years. And I'm there and I'm working and I'm volunteering and I have a certain amount of experience in, KPIs and corporate and all those other stuff. So I'm able to speak to some of the stuff that they can't speak to. But the thing is that, it just brings me joy that I can go here to this community in an area that I don't live in and just give my time and allow them to have a resource that they don't have the budget to get otherwise. Because I don't think they could necessarily afford someone who had my skill set because it's a nonprofit and they don't have a lot of funding. So that really, that's the stuff that really enjoys me. So I'd have to say,
Mm.
that's what makes me happy doing that. I do admit I like to travel. I get joy from that, but I think ultimately, even if I didn't travel, if I was just home and I was helping folks, like I'm the president of the PTA club, I just enjoy that kind of stuff. So that's what really makes me happy. And I could not do that if I didn't make those sacrifices many years ago to be able to do that. So
Hmm.
definitely. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you asking me that question. And one of the things that I want to kind of mention here as we get ready to start to wrap up, Doug, is that I had the good fortune of being on Mile High Fire recently. I know at this point the episode's going to air soon, hasn't aired yet. But the thing is that we kind of start talking, and we start talking about cinema. And somehow or another, we start talking about Christmas time and Hallmark movies and Lifetime and stuff like that. And I kind of shared with you that how I was kind of anti Hallmark Lifetime movie-ish around Christmas time, but I had gotten COVID some years ago, and I sat down and I had to watch it. And I was like, you know what, this ain't pretty bad. This ain't bad at all. And then you made a very compelling and thought-provoking comparison between kind of those movies and some of the concepts behind Fire. So if you don't mind, kind of sharing your insights around that.
Yeah. And these are, people make fun of them, but it's really the height of cinema, these Hallmark movies.
It really
It's great.
is.
It's great. It's great writing. The production value is fantastic.
Yes.
Now, all right, seriously though, so people stay with us here.
Mhm,
I thought these movies were very silly
mhm,
and I mean, people make fun of them. There's a great SNL sketch about them. People should look that up.
mhm,
But basically, these Hallmark movies are a great metaphor for FI and the
mhm,
values that we have in the fire community. Most of these movies are extremely formulaic,
mhm,
and I mean, it's like they're rolling dice and they're like, all right, we're going to have a Christmas tree farm. It's a lawyer. There's
uh-huh.
going to be a bake off for cupcakes or something like that. And the reason why it fits so well, and people again try and watch. I'll give you a recommendation in a moment here, but
Cool.
the thing is, it's usually someone from the big city that have a corporate job, and maybe they had a relative pass away, their grandmother passed away, and they're going to have to go back to the small town and get the Christmas tree farm, back on track and serve hot chocolate or whatever. They
Mhm,
rekindle their flame from high school or something like that, and it all works out in the end. there's always some misunderstanding. I don't want to spoil any of the movies, but there's always a misunderstanding in there.
Right.
And at the end of the day, they end up realizing what really matters, what's really valuable. And it's the stuff that we talked about. It's like community, it's serving the community, like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, and our relationships with friends and family. And that's what's really important. And part of it is like not working so hard and
Mm-hmm.
spending time maybe working on something that you find more valuable and fulfilling. So
Mm-hmm.
these movies are a, a really good way to just exemplify in a kind of a silly, syrupy way
Mm-hmm.
the fi lifestyle.
Yeah.
So
No, I think, and so when the first time you mentioned that to me when we were talking, I was like, man, I was like,
come on, dude.
I see it. I was like, now that I think about it, I see it, because I think
Yeah.
about it, because typically, and like you said, in all those movies, they're kind of pursuing something. Usually they're like uber successful people. I mean, like, they're going to New York, LA, they're big time. But then something happened and it draws them back to something a lot more, something simpler. And they kind of go back to their roots or something like that. And they
Yeah.
remember, about, how they used to go down to Mr. Johnson's corner store and he had, fresh ice cream and just all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they come to the realization that kind of what they were chasing really didn't matter that much. And that it was really about, the sense of community and kind of serving people and stuff like that. And I'm picking up what you're putting down there, Doug. I really do, because it might seem cheesy, but I am completely with you.
Yeah. So I'll give a recommendation. I'm glad because some people, they don't accept this too well. And
Mhm.
at least you watched a few of these.
Yeah, I
So,
have. Mhm.
um, quick delineation. A lot of times the Hallmark movies are a little bit funnier. I think the Lifetime ones are a little more uh,
A little heavier.
serious. Yeah, yeah, a little more serious. So
Uh,
lean towards the Lifetime or lean towards the Hallmark, not the Lifetime.
okay.
And the recommendation, because most people probably have not watched one, and if you're like, I don't really want to check it out, there's one called Cluster Funk Christmas. And this one has some people that were
Okay.
on SNL. I forget the names of the ladies that are on there, but this is kind of a meta take on it. So they make fun of the genre there,
Okay.
and they're self-aware. So they're doing all the tropes and things that happen in these
Mm,
movies,
mm.
but they know they're doing it, and it's a little bit funnier. So it's Cluster Funk
Okay.
Christmas, and I think you'll find it on some streaming network, but that's one to check out because it's a little bit more it's funnier. It's funnier in general.
Mhm.
And I think yeah, I think people, it's a great thing to put on TV when you're cooking or you're decorating your tree or
Mhm.
whatever. You don't have to pay too close attention. And I will say, secret to life and the
Okay.
secret to watching these movies is low expectations. So if you have low
Okay.
expectations, you're not going to be disappointed.
Yeah, but I can let you know of the movies, because it happened a couple years ago. But I will say that ever since then, I intentionally look at them with my wife and my kids now. I did not used to do that. So
Oh yeah.
that is something that came out of the COVID times for me. It slowed me down and it made me look at it, because I was ramping up, like trying to cross the finish line to my FI number. And so I was always at it. And so what happened is I hadn't slowed down, and that made me slow down. I looked at it. And so now every year we do that. And so actually now I tell my wife, I actually look forward to it, which is crazy. Thank you for those recommendations. I will make sure that I will make sure to put those down in the description and also share those out. So for those, for individuals who want to keep up with you, Doug, what is the best way for them to follow and continue to connect on the things you're doing?
Yeah, just check out the podcast Mile High Fi, and it's on all the podcast players over on YouTube. So I have like a little studio down here, and as often as possible, I have, live interviews. And, if people are fans of Mr. Money Mustache,
Mhm.
he's recorded a handful of episodes with me. So you could check those out. Those are a good starting point. And we've
Mhm.
done mailbags recently, and he's been joining me fairly often over the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, everyone, make sure to check Doug out at Mile High Fi. Like I said, I'll make sure to link to the information down in the description. So, in closing out here, I want to thank you for your time, Doug. I know that you are very mindful with it. So, thank you so much for being willing to give it to me and the audience. As I sign off here, I want to remind everyone to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, make sure to trust the process. Have a great day.